Hello people of YouTube, it's Deepak here, and welcome to DCS World 2.7.0 and Eagle Dynamics F-16C Viper module. Welcome to Tutorial 3, Air-to-Air Radar BVR modes. I should start out by explaining what BVR is. Air combat is broken into two categories generally, BVR and WVR. BVR standing for beyond visual range, so that's combat where you can no longer use your eyes, you must rely on sensors of your aircraft, such as the radar, or forward-looking infrared, or any other kind of visual search track system that your aircraft might have. WVR is within visual range, commonly referred to as dogfighting. That's once you've merged with the other aircraft, you're able to see them with your eyes, and you can engage them mostly relying on your eyes. But yes, today we're going to focus on BVR. So the F-16, as seen here, is equipped with the APG-68 fire control radar. It's a pulse Doppler, look-down, shoot-down capable radar. Now, what does this mean? It means that, well, older radars, they often struggled to detect targets against ground clutter. So if the radar had to look downwards towards the target, behind the target it would get lots of radar echoes from the ground, and those could confuse the radar and make it very difficult for it to detect and track its intended target. Modern radars like the APG-68 and the F-16 here have very advanced digital processing, and they're capable of filtering out that ground clutter and maintaining a lock on a target even if it's obscured by ground clutter to a degree. The APG-68 fire control radar is housed in the grey fiberglass radome on the nose of the aircraft, and just above that you'll see there are four little fin antennas in front of the canopy. Those are the IFF antenna, and we're going to be going over the IFF system as well. IFF standing for Identification Friend or Foe. It's a radio transponder based system, and it sends a challenge. Friendly aircraft will respond with a properly coded response, and they'll then be shown on your radar as friendly. Enemy aircraft, generally speaking, will not respond at all because they will have an incompatible IFF system, or in the event that they do respond, they will almost certainly send the wrong type of response and can then be identified as not friendly. IFF never identifies hostiles, by the way, so the only thing that happens is either it says this is a friendly or it says this is an unknown, and of course in most cases an unknown is going to be an enemy. If it is a military aircraft, of course. Civilian aircraft are not fitted with IFF. So, with this in mind, let's jump into the cockpit and I'll go over the display. Okay, you join us back here in the cockpit of the F-16C. I've zoomed down on the left multifunction display here, and we currently have a blank screen. Aircraft is in nav mode, by the way, and the pages across the bottom are the default pages for nav mode. Now, I thought I'd give you the whole process of how to bring the FCR display up, although actually by default in nav mode it is on the left multifunction display. This of course could change at some point in the future, and also of course once we have the data cartridge system we'll be able to customize which displays appear on which MFDs in which modes. But for now, FCR should almost always be on the left multifunction display. So a couple of different ways we could get there. We could just click FCR because it's one of the default pages on the left. So if I click FCR, I get the FCR. Let's jump to the DTE for now. Or if I press display management switch left to control the left display, I can page between the different pages that I have preset here. So let's leave it on the FCR just now. Also, it currently says not SOI. That means currently this display is not the sensor of interest, and the cursor will not control the cursor in this screen. If we press display management switch down, we'll then have a white box around the display, and that caption will disappear. And we can now control the radar cursor using our standard cursor controls. If I press display management switch down again, it will actually make the right MFD the sensor of interest. And then if I press it again, we have control over this screen again. So that's your starting position. Controls across the top will basically control the modes of the radar. CRM, which as I said before stands for Combined Radar Mode. And if I click on that, down the left hand side we have the air-to-air modes, which are combined radar modes for beyond visual range, and air combat modes, ACM, for dogfighting or within visual range. Right hand side is the air to ground modes. At present none of these are implemented, but they will be coming in a future update, apart from standby. I can choose standby, and that basically powers the radar down entirely. But let's click standby, click CRM, and when you're in CRM it will always default to RWS, which is one of the two modes that you have in CRM. So RWS is range while search. This is the most basic air-to-air mode and does the least processing for you. And we also have TWS. If we click RWS, we'll switch to TWS. And TWS is track while scan. And this is a more advanced mode used for displaying a bit more information about your targets and allowing you to more easily employ multiple AIM-120s against multiple targets. Let's switch back to RWS for now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the symbology that we've got on the screen here. So going down the left hand side we have the current range. It's currently set to 80 nautical miles. We can increase this all the way up to 160, and we can go all the way down to 5 nautical miles. I'm going to put it back to 80 for now. The next is the azimuth. So azimuth is basically the width of the cone, left and right. So currently it's on 6 for 60 degrees. I can click to put it into a 30-degree scan, and you'll see that it displays these blue lines, so we can now see the new extent of the scan, and targets that are outside of that are now fading away because we've lost contact with them. We also have an option for 10 degrees, and of course on the 10-degree scan we're going to lose all of these because all of them will be outside. I'll pop it back to 60. Next setting is the bars. Now, if you imagine that the radar scans, actually you can see it here, this T symbol is the antenna. It scans left to right, and then you see that after it gets to the edge, it switches to a new elevation. This is actually the up and down, the elevation of the radar antenna. The bar scan controls how many of these bars, how many of these vertical slices the radar is going to take. The more bars you have, the greater the vertical space that you're going to scan. However, the slower the updates will be of these contacts, because of course they're only going to generate a return when the radar elevation is pointed at them. So we can reduce this. 4 bars is the maximum. We can go down to 1 bar. In 1 bar you're really only scanning your own altitude. 2 bar and 4 bar. So, actually in TWS you can do a 3 bar as well. Something to note in combination with the bar scan is that your cursor will always show you the maximum and minimum altitudes that are being scanned at that position. So if I move the cursor about, well, for one thing, imagine that it's a cone. So actually, as I move the cursor closer to my own aircraft, you can see it's a much smaller volume of space that we're scanning. Right in front of the aircraft here, we're only scanning between 14,000 feet and 25,000 feet. If I move the cursor all the way out to the maximum here of 80, oops, I bumped it out a little bit. If I move it right out to the maximum of about 80, you'll see that we're actually scanning all the way up to 60,000 feet and to negative 22,000 feet. So, of course, that's intersecting with the ground. So this gives you a feel for how much you're scanning. So that's in 4 bar, we're getting this range. If I dump it down to 1 bar, even all the way out here, we're only scanning between 2,000 and 37,000. 2 bar would give us, well, up to 45, and the 4 bar bumps us right back up to 60,000 feet. So that's quite useful. The M4 just means that our IFF is in mode 4. If we were to make use of IFF, then it would display what kind of scan it was doing there. In fact, I can demonstrate that now. If you press TMS left short, you'll see it says scan, and friendly aircraft will give a mode 4 response. So you'll see, I'll do it again, just so you can see that again. We get a green circle with a 4 on it over friendly targets, and that means that they gave a valid mode 4 response, and that means we can be very confident that those are friendly aircraft. Down here in the bottom left corner we have the bullseye indications. This is for our own ship. So currently my aircraft is 299 degrees for 99 miles from the bullseye, and even gives you a little arrow pointing where the bullseye is. We then have the normal controls for your displays here. These are the same across all MFD pages, so we can swap our screens between the left and right, we can declutter, and we can also access the other pages. Ready just tells us the radar is ready and emitting, and these are range marks. So as we're in the 80 mile setting, this is 20, 40, 60, and the very top of the screen is 80. If we bumped it down to 40, then it's 10, 20, 30, 40, etc. You get the idea. The only other thing that is currently implemented is this center push button at the top that says normal. If I push normal, it gives me the expanded view, and the expanded view is very useful for looking at aircraft in close proximity to one another. Otherwise, they just kind of merge together. So if I bump that back out, it gives me a full screen. If I put it into expanded, it actually gives me a zoomed in display, and that can be quite useful. Override and control pages are not currently implemented. Okay, so let's take a little look at the first of the two sub-modes, RWS, which stands for Range While Search. This mode does the least processing, as I said, so rather than building up a track file, as TWS does, and kind of give you a sort of unified symbol, all that this mode is doing is actually displaying the individual radar returns with a little bit of a history. Now that's a little bit difficult for us to see right now, but if I use the expanded mode, you'll see that if I look at this group, there are two aircraft. The most recent returns are the ones which are white, so you can see these aircraft are moving towards us in this direction, as indicated by the historical radar returns. And we can interact with these aircraft by putting our cursor over them. When we put our cursor over them, it's going to confirm their current altitude, which is 20,000 feet in this case. And if I press TMS forward, that will bug the target. Now, while we're in the bugged mode, that's basically just telling the radar that we're concentrating on that particular aircraft and we're doing a scan around the aircraft, just for situational awareness basically. And situational awareness in this mode will give us a 20-degree scan around the currently bugged target. So all of the other returns will continue to just be what we call bricks. So bricks are, well, these filled squares. So we can still see these targets behind the currently bugged target, but those that are outside this 20-degree scan range now disappear. And while this target is in bugged mode, it won't be getting a lock indication on its RWR, but we do have enough information to launch an AIM-120. So I could fire an AMRAAM at this target right now, while maintaining a little bit of situational awareness of other targets, although, you know, it's a reduced scan that it does at this point. What I could then also do is I could press TMS forward again, and we're now in what's called STT, which is a single target track. The radar is now firing a focused beam of radar energy at this aircraft only, and we now have no situational awareness. No other targets will appear on the radar display. However, this generates the most up-to-date information about that target. We're basically repeatedly scanning it over and over and over again, getting many updates per second about this target. So it's not going to be able to easily maneuver to break our lock in this mode. Additionally, we get information about the target across the top. So left to right, we have the current aspect to the target, so basically how many degrees off of our nose is this target, its current heading, it's flying heading 260 degrees, its current airspeed, it's flying at 240 knots, and its current closure rate. So currently we are closing on this aircraft at 385 knots, so we're going towards it. And we also get a little stem here showing us its direction of travel in relation to the direction in which our aircraft is facing. So he's moving left to right and away very slightly, and again he's at 20,000 feet. If I want to break this lock, one thing to note of course, while I have him in STT, his radar warning receiver will be going crazy. It will be indicating that he's been locked up, so he'll be hearing all kinds of alarming sounds right now. If I press TMS aft, short, then we drop it back to a bugged target, and once again we can see the other targets around it, which is quite useful. And so I can see that there's actually another aircraft in that formation just to his left, and it's showing up as a brick. If I press TMS aft again, I drop the bugged target entirely, and we return to the normal range while search mode. And that actually is the basic functionality of this display. It doesn't really do anything else. And like I said, it's a very, very simple mode. You either have bricks, which are these bare targets, or you have a bugged target if you TMS forward short, or if you TMS forward short again, you're in single target track. And there we go. That's us back to the normal display. So, track while search is the more advanced mode. If I press TMS right long, we can actually bump straight into that, and I'm going to pause at this moment because some things will start to happen and I want to show you the symbology before they happen. Other method, of course, is to click this button here. If I click this button at the top of the MFD, we'll switch between RWS and TWS, but the quick way to do it is to press TMS right long, and that will toggle between the two as well. So, track while scan, track while scan, yes, is way more advanced. The aircraft, rather than just displaying the raw radar return information on the screen with a kind of ghosting history, it will only display what it believes to be the current position of the aircraft, so you get a much cleaner display, and it will interpret all of the radar returns to figure out current direction of travel and so on. Now, of course, depending on the number of bars that you're doing in your scan and how quickly the antenna is going backwards and forwards, there might be a couple of seconds between each update of the aircraft's position. TWS, though, will interpret this, and it will continuously display the position of the aircraft smoothly, because it will guess where the aircraft is going to be before the next scan happens. Now, of course, you can make this much, much smoother by reducing the number of bars and only scanning the volume of space where you know aircraft are. We know that all of these aircraft are flying at 20,000 feet because that's where I put them. Kind of cheating, I guess. So I could reduce the number of bars so that we were only scanning around about our own altitude. Actually, 1 bar would probably do the trick, and then we would get very, very fast, very accurate updates. But we could leave it in 4 bar, allow the computer to guess where the aircraft are going to be, and then we get smooth movements of these targets across the screen, and that's really quite helpful. So, there are multiple types of target track in TWS. Like I said, TWS does not just display the bare bricks, the RWS does, which are just the pure radar returns that we've received. These small filled squares are called search targets. Search targets are displayed when the radar does not have enough information to accurately predict the path of the aircraft. So in most cases this will mean we've had 1 radar return from this aircraft and we've not built up enough of a track yet. That's why I wanted to pause. Let's unpause and you'll see what happens to these after we scan them a few more times. So there we go. Search targets, small squares. After a few scans, and if we get some more returns, give it a little bit more time. It seems to be having a hard time actually producing target tracks for these. Okay, let's reduce the number of bars and give the radar an easier time. There you go. That's what I was hoping for. Big filled squares. Yeah, it's having a harder time doing that for the further away ones, but the ones that are up close, it's done it. So, what are these? These are called track targets. So, this furthest away group here, this is still a search target. Oh, no, it just filled in. So yeah, it's had enough returns now that it feels like it can accurately determine exactly what those aircraft are doing. So now that they are track targets, the system has built up a history of those targets' movements over time, and it's confident that it can predict exactly where they're going to be at any given moment. And of course, from time to time, based on whether or not these aircraft fly behind each other from our point of view or whatever, they might drop back down to search targets where it's less confident about them. So you can see that the movement of these aircraft, both their rotation and their travel, is very smooth now. I can even actually zoom in on these, and you can see, look, they're smoothly moving. They're not jumping like they do in RWS, and that's because the radar computer is now actually doing a lot of prediction about what it thinks these aircraft are doing. So, what happens next? Next we have what's called a system target. Now, a system target is us telling the radar that we are very interested in this aircraft, most likely because we're going to employ weapons against it. So if I put my cursor over one of these, and these are currently track targets, if I press TMS forward, it is now an empty big square, you'll see. And that's me turn that into a system target. So basically I'm telling the radar to prioritize that target. It will actually spend more of its processing time predicting it than before, and we're almost ready to employ weapons against it. It's not like a bugged target in RWS, we can't fire on that yet, but we're getting ready to fire. And I'm actually going to do the same for his buddy. You can now see that we have two large non-filled squares there, and those are both system targets. Now, a cute little trick that we have while we have system targets is that I can press TMS right short and it will bug the closest one. And now we're ready to fire. That is enough information to fire an AIM-120 AMRAAM. And he will not be getting an RWR lock indication, so that's useful. If I press TMS short right again, it jumps to the second one, and so on and so forth. If I had more of these system targets, TMS right would flip between all of them. And this would allow me to fire an AMRAAM, TMS right, fire another AMRAAM, TMS right, fire another AMRAAM. We can do this for up to 10 targets, so it's a very, very capable system. If I press TMS aft short again, I dump the currently bugged target. If I press TMS aft short again, I dump all of my system targets, and now we're back to just normal track targets. Something else to note is that while we have system targets, let me very quickly make a system target again, and while I have the cursor over that system target, that is actually called a cursor target. And a cursor target is a way of focusing the radar kind of in the area of that target. You'll notice that I'm now doing 3 bar by default and a 25-degree scan. And if I make this other one here also a system target and then move the cursor away, you can see that it's no longer doing the small scan, but if I put the cursor over them, it's now focusing the radar on that area. So that's called a cursor target. I know there are a lot of targets here. So I'm going to TMS right short again, and again I've got my bugged target. Like I said, I could now fire missiles at this, or if I put my cursor over it and go TMS forward again, I'm now in STT. And that dumps all the target tracks and it focuses all the radar energy on this one target. And this acts in exactly the same way as in RWS. And in this mode, of course, I could then employ the Sparrow, because the Sparrow requires STT. If I TMS aft once, I'm dropped back down to this being a bugged target, and it's building up tracks for the other one in the formation. And TMS short again, I unbug him, TMS aft again, I drop him from a system target back to a track target. So very, very quickly, just to go over those symbols again. Small filled square is a search target. We have insufficient information to build a proper track. Large filled square is a track target. We now have good information on that target, and the system is very easily able to predict where that target is going to be. Large unfilled square is a system target. We've basically made it a priority. And a large unfilled square with a circle around it is a bugged target. We now have enough information to cue a missile against it. One last thing to take a little look at is if I press TMS right short without any system targets, it will make everything on the screen a system target. So this is a very quick way of being able to go TMS right, they're all system targets, and then TMS right, TMS right, TMS right, TMS right, TMS right. I can flip through all of these. It can only do this with track targets. You'll notice that actually one of them never did get filled because it wasn't actually a track target at the time. It was a small square. And then again, TMS left will give me IFF returns. So we now know that right-hand group are friendly, as shown by the green circles, and the 2-ship off of our nose is confirmed hostile. So that concludes this tutorial. These are the basics of the CRM modes, the BVR modes of the air-to-air radar. That was range while search and track while scan. I haven't looked at the data link or weapons employment or anything within visual range. That will come in a later video. I hope you all enjoyed that. If you haven't already, please subscribe, like and comment. It's such a big help to me and to the channel, and I'll see you all next time.